Dad, remember that gymnastics routine from yesterday? The one with the bride who stripped off all her clothes. The atmosphere in the wedding reception hall went dead silent at my daughter's words. Just as the bride was about to read a letter to her parents, 5-year-old Tina blurted it out. The bride's face turned to stone, and Luke, who was holding Tina on his lap, looked like he'd seen a ghost. As the eyes of everyone in the hall turned towards our table, Tina continued, "Why would she undress if it wasn't bath time? You'll catch a cold if you undress anywhere other than the bathroom." To a child, it might be an innocent question, but adults instantly understood the implication. The hall couldn't settle down. The murmur was still there. Luke took Tina outside, and the female hosts, although shaken, tried to continue the ceremony. Encouraged by the hosts, the bride tried to resume reading her letter, but her voice was clearly trembling. Usually, you'd hear sniffling and see tears of emotion filling the hall, but not a sound could be heard. Tina's comment had turned what should have been a joyous event into complete chaos. "I'm Bianca, 33 years old, and I live with Luke and our 5-year-old daughter Tina. Luke has a brother who got married a bit late at 40 to a much younger woman, who's 28. Finally, they decided to tie the knot. At the family meeting about the engagement, my brother-in-law seemed utterly smitten with his fiancée. It was really heartwarming to see. Who could have thought that attending my brother-in-law's wedding as a family of 3 would lead to such a disaster?" Naturally, after the wedding reception ended, the bridal suite turned into a scene of chaos. I immediately confronted Luke. "What was that all about?" "That's just Tina being Tina. Don't take it seriously," he replied. "Our kid just disrupted the whole ceremony. Of course I'm rattled. And it's your lack of discipline that led to this. You need to teach her better manners." Luke then quickly handed Tina over to me and left in a hurry. I felt like he was running away from me. We were staying at Luke's parents' house that night before the wedding because it took place at a hotel near his hometown, and we live far away. His parents are genuinely kind people. They always have my back. Unlike some of my friends who dislike going to their in-laws, I've never felt uncomfortable there. That's why we had planned to take a week-long vacation around the time of the wedding and relax at Luke's parents' house before heading home. Even though both my brother-in-law and sister-in-law are planning on living in that house, it's spacious enough to accommodate us comfortably. Tina, who's usually told not to run around in our cramped apartment, seemed excited and restless, walking all over the house to explore. Come to think of it, I recall Luke and my sister-in-law being absent for a bit last night when we were having a good time drinking with my brother-in-law and parents-in-law. "Mom, Dad's playing around. Tina wants to join in too." I feel like Tina did say something like that. Who would have thought that what she was referring to was Luke and my sister-in-law cheating in the bridal suite? My brother-in-law and sister-in-law spent a long time talking. Eventually, we decided to head to the after-party. Our friends were waiting for us at the after-party, but Tina and I ended up going back to my parents-in-law's house. If what Tina said is true, I am so sorry. My mother-in-law kept apologizing, looking genuinely regretful as we left the hall. "Please stop. Luke is the one who's at fault here. But even though you've done nothing wrong, it's my fault for not properly teaching him how to treat women. No family could possibly teach that level of decency." When we arrived at my parents-in-law's home, Luke was already back, sitting alone, watching TV, and drinking a beer. Standing tall, my mother-in-law broke the ice. "So, what kind of gymnastics are we talking about? I'd love to see it." "That's not it. I was just asking my future sister-in-law to look after my brother." "What a considerate younger brother you are, but I can't imagine Tina lying. She's only 5 years old and she often says strange things. Tina is my granddaughter, and she's very bright. So, you're taking the word of a bad girl over your own son. Don't you dare call my precious granddaughter a bad girl." "Are you getting mad?" Both my mother-in-law and I had our suspicions about Luke, but we couldn't push it further based solely on the word of a 5-year-old. Luke wouldn't admit anything. He just went into a sulk and locked himself in his room. 2 days after the wedding, both my mother-in-law and I kept an eye on Luke, but he didn't do anything suspicious. Well, my brother-in-law and sister-in-law went off on their honeymoon, so it's not like he had a chance to be suspicious anyway. Meanwhile, Tina, ever the little explorer around the house, found something unbelievable. "Mommy, what does this say?" Tina can't read cursive yet. "You shouldn't be going through Grandma and Grandpa's stuff." "No, it wasn't like that. I found this in Dad's bag." "Is it a letter?" Tina has written to her friends at preschool before. "Let me see." Shockingly, it was a letter from my sister-in-law to Luke. No, calling it a letter doesn't quite do it justice. It was undeniably a love letter. The letter read, "Dear Luke, the day before the wedding was so exciting, wasn't it? We have to be cautious for a while since we're being watched at home, but we'll definitely have a chance, so don't give up. You're the only one I love, Luke. The reason I married an older man is so I could be with you. Come get me soon." I couldn't let myself break down in front of Tina, so I forced myself to keep my composure. "This is a work-related letter, so Mom will take care of it, okay?" "Okay," Tina replied cheerfully, heading off on another household adventure. So Tina wasn't mistaken after all. She really did see what was happening. I calmly took a photo of the letter and placed it back into Luke's bag. Then I went to the kitchen where my mother-in-law was making pickles. "Mother-in-law, Tina found a love letter that sister-in-law sent to Luke." "What?" As I showed her the photo of the letter on my phone, my mother-in-law's face fell. "What is this? It's disturbing. This is unfair to brother-in-law. Why have such a flashy wedding if this is going on? If she didn't love him, why did she marry him?" My mother-in-law was visibly angry, her face turning red. At this point, I decided to tell her something that had been bothering me. "Luke said he has to go back alone tomorrow because work suddenly came up, even though he was supposed to be on vacation." My mother-in-law looked up at me, deep in thought. "Doesn't that seem odd?" "Exactly." My mother-in-law and I exchanged glances, both of us seemingly concerned about the same thing. "The timing is just too perfect. Plus his brother and his wife are on their honeymoon in Hawaii. Do you think they're planning to meet up there?" I nodded in agreement. I hate to say it, but brother-in-law is a very kind person who is unfortunately a bit naive and easily deceived. There is no doubt in my mind that the two of them plan to have a secret meeting without brother-in-law noticing. After all the trouble to finally get married, he ends up with a woman like that. It's even sadder because they seem so happy. "Let's go with that." Mother-in-law suddenly stood up and began washing her hands. "All right, start packing for Hawaii. Your father's coming too." "What?" I was genuinely surprised by mother-in-law's sudden declaration, but she looked at me and smiled, clearly pleased. "We're going to expose everything. Do they have any idea how much we spent on that wedding? Just because he's marrying a younger woman, we even chipped in 30 grand. This is no joke. We're definitely getting that back." I couldn't help but applaud mother-in-law's determination and immediately started to prepare as well. For some reason, mother-in-law seemed strangely excited, and deep down, I was excited too. Just wait, we'll make them wish they were never born. The next morning, Luke was having breakfast, trying too hard to keep a straight face. "It's really a shame you have to work after finally getting some time off. Just relax and enjoy your time." Even though no one was listening, Luke loudly announced his departure, then left in a flurry. We quickly packed our bags, our parents-in-law, Tina, and I left about 2 hours later. Luckily, we got the tickets and a hotel with no issue. Tina was thrilled, shouting and playing. We chose a lodging spot a bit away from the hotel where we heard brother-in-law would be staying, so we wouldn't attract attention. Upon arrival, mother-in-law decided to call brother-in-law to see how things were going. "How's Hawaii?" Responding to mother-in-law, brother-in-law's relaxed voice came through the speakerphone. "It's warm and relaxing. We're planning to go to Sea Life Park, Hawaii tomorrow. Look forward to some souvenirs." Brother-in-law seemed to be having a great time but mentioned, "Well, my wife is going out to dinner with a friend who lives in Oahu tonight, so I'll be alone." Hearing that, mother-in-law lifted her gaze and exchanged glances with me. No doubt Luke and sister-in-law are probably having a secret meeting tonight. "Well, enjoy Hawaii." Mother-in-law decided to hang up, perhaps concluding that now was not the time to say anything. It's sad for brother-in-law who is in the dark about all of this. Who would have thought we'd catch Luke and sister-in-law on a date as soon as we landed? Though we have valuable information, my emotions were a mess. I wished it were a lie. I wished it were just sister-in-law's one-sided affection, but Luke had followed her all the way to Hawaii. Ignoring this wasn't an option anymore. After discussing with my parents-in-law, we decided that father-in-law, who could blend in the most, should tail sister-in-law as she left the hotel for her date tonight. Father-in-law put on a hat and a mask, transforming into an unnoticeable passerby in seconds. "Way to go, Dad. You're completely unnoticeable." Tina added. "Grandpa is sus." She was delighted whether he was being praised or teased. Easily influenced by mother-in-law's words, father-in-law decided to stake out at a cafe in front of the hotel where brother-in-law and his group were staying. Hun, your mission is threefold. 1. Follow daughter-in-law as she leaves the hotel. 2. Confirm she's meeting with Luke. And 3. Keep an eye on her until she enters and leaves another hotel. Got it? Father-in-law nodded earnestly at mother-in-law's forceful instructions. Equipped with his high-sensitivity DSLR camera and a big telephoto lens that he bought as a hobby, he headed out. We were incredibly grateful to father-in-law, who willingly took on the task despite the long hours it would entail. Mother-in-law, Tina, and I finished dinner and returned to the hotel. After putting Tina to bed, we waited for father-in-law's return. Surprisingly, father-in-law didn't come back until 3 o'clock in the morning. Let me sleep for now, he muttered as he crawled into bed, looking exhausted. So we decided to hear the full story the next morning. The next day, as we looked at the photos father-in-law had taken while listening to his account, there was irrefutable evidence. True to his love for photography, father-in-law's shots were incredibly detailed. Even from a distance, you could see the two of them embracing clearly. So she really is cheating after all, I said, feeling the weight of the truth. It was a hard truth to accept for brother-in-law and me, but living a lie in a marriage was not an option. Seeing my downcast mood, mother-in-law asserted, we should put an end to this difficult time as soon as possible. I couldn't agree more. On the second day, we learned that brother-in-law planned to go to Sea Life Park, Hawaii, so we decided to rent a car and follow him there. Inside the park, we left Tina with father-in-law while mother-in-law and I walked around. Soon enough, we spotted brother-in-law and his wife. Brother-in-law was genuinely interested in the aquarium displays while sister-in-law was glued to her phone, showing zero interest in the aquatic life. Just as we were about to approach them, mother-in-law's phone rang. Apparently, father-in-law had spotted Luke coming out of the restroom. They're probably planning to meet discreetly here as well without my son noticing. You're probably right. Let's wait for that moment. We kept our distance and waited for sister-in-law to make a move. As expected, within 10 minutes, she left brother-in-law, who was busy looking at souvenirs, and started walking somewhere. We discreetly followed her to a less crowded exhibit area. When she found Luke, she immediately leaped into his arms and hugged him. Seeing this without any regard for others, something inside me broke. I couldn't hold back any longer. I marched up to the embracing couple and pulled them apart. Luke was shocked, his eyes wide open at my sudden appearance. I unleashed several slaps on him right then and there. Ow, stop it. I honestly don't remember how many times I hit him. I hit him before mother-in-law stopped me. She grabbed sister-in-law, who tried to escape when we showed up. How dare you deceive my precious son? Sit down. Frustrated, Luke and sister-in-law sat down on the floor. To avoid causing a scene, we moved to the rental car. Brother-in-law was already in the car, looking sad. It seemed he'd heard about what happened from father-in-law. In the minivan, we pushed Luke and sister-in-law into the farthest back row while mother-in-law and I sat in the second row to block their exit. When did you start cheating? I demanded. I'm not cheating or anything. Why are you all even in Hawaii? Luke retorted. What about you? Why are you here? I'm here for work. Don't lie, you came chasing after this woman, didn't you? It's a coincidence. Even then, Luke still tried to deceive us. So I confronted him with the evidence, photos that father-in-law had taken. We can see you two were having fun until around 3 o'clock a.m. Father-in-law followed you. Luke sighed heavily. Sister-in-law kept her eyes down and said nothing. So what Tina said during the wedding reception wasn't a lie, was it? You two were exercising the night before the wedding, weren't you? Look, I was in a tough spot too. I was bothered when sister-in-law came on to me. I told her multiple times that I have a loving wife and daughter, so it can't happen, right? Just then, Luke started to shift all the blame onto sister-in-law, who responded with an incredulous "huh." Grabbing Luke, she yelled, "Who is the one saying leave my brother and be with me?" "No, I never said that," Luke shot back, and their argument began to heat up. Back and forth they went, arguing about who said what. I didn't come to Hawaii to listen to this nonsense. Finally, I couldn't hold back any longer. Enough. I don't care who initiated it. Why can't you just apologize when you clearly betrayed me and brother-in-law? I'm the victim here, Luke insisted. If you try to dodge responsibility anymore, I'll make your life a living hell. What are you planning to do? Let's just say I'll make sure everyone in your social and work circles recognizes you as the fool who slept with his brother's wife. What's the point in doing that? Well, if people aren't warned, you might try to make moves on their wives or girlfriends. I would never do that. You've already done it, haven't you? He had no comeback. Luke fell silent. It turned out that during a family dinner that had doubled as a meeting to sort things out, sister-in-law had developed a liking for Luke. Luke didn't mind the attention and continued a casual relationship with her. Bizarrely, Luke even suggested to sister-in-law, "Why don't you first marry my brother, get a share of his wealth, and then divorce him and marry me?" For some unknown reason, sister-in-law seemed to go along with it. Unbelievable. To be swayed by these two. Luke, who is supposed to be my husband, now looks utterly repulsive to me. "This dirty man is all yours. I don't want him anymore," I said. Sister-in-law, surprisingly pleased with my words, turned to me and smiled. "Really? What was all that fighting about just moments ago? But let me tell you, a man like this will definitely do it again. Cheating outside is one thing, but hitting on a family member is just sick, especially when he falls for a terrible woman like you. There's no cure." Sister-in-law, entirely unfazed by my words, smirked as if she'd won. Is that a cry of defeat? I wondered. Well, do enjoy your few months together then. Even Luke joined in, grabbing sister-in-law's hand and starting to celebrate. What an incredibly cheerful pair they are. "Because of you, I spent $30,000 on a wedding we didn't even need to have. I expect that money back. I'll also be seeking compensation in the divorce proceedings." "I expect $20,000 from each of you," I stated firmly. Hearing my mother-in-law's demand, sister-in-law suddenly shouted, "That's totally unfair." Luke joined in, saying, "As if we can afford that. If you don't pay, we'll go through lawyers and take this to court. If you two can find happiness under a $70,000 debt, be my guest." "This is outrageous. We just love each other a little," Luke protested. "That's precisely the problem. You'll both be held fully responsible for what you did," mother-in-law shot back. Just then, brother-in-law suddenly started moving the rental car. "Where do you think you're going?" I asked. Brother-in-law drove silently and, when he reached a deserted area near the ocean, he took their wallets and cell phones and left them there. I was surprised. I had never seen brother-in-law this angry before. As the rental car pulled away, their cries of "Don't leave us here. Please come back," echoed. "Watch out for snakes and mongooses, okay?" I waved cheerfully as I said this. I wondered how long it would take them to walk back to town from here. I hoped they made it back safely. Just then, I received a call from father-in-law. "Tina is looking for you, Bianca," he said. "We decided to head back to the aquarium. Let's enjoy Hawaii while we're here." "Absolutely," I agreed. We returned to the aquarium. At the large tank, brother-in-law was holding Tina's hand, both engrossed by the sharks. They actually looked happy. Better to see these lovely smiles than waste time on fools. Father-in-law's words lifted my spirits. Brother-in-law also appeared quite relieved, which was surprising considering he was just betrayed by his new wife. "I bet he's hurting inside. I know I am, being betrayed by Luke. But I refused to shed tears over them, and I thought brother-in-law must feel the same." Later on, brother-in-law and sister-in-law's divorce was finalized. Only 5 days had passed since the wedding reception, but brother-in-law returned all the wedding gifts to the guests. I also finalized my divorce with Luke, and Tina would now be living with me. I ended up getting all the assets in the divorce settlement, and we agreed on $400 per month for child support. Luke, ever conscious of what others think, easily agreed when my parents-in-law and I, through our lawyers, demanded money from him. He ended up shouldering a $70,000 repayment. But you can't control what people say. Rumors spread easily that he had an affair with his brother's wife and even followed her to Hawaii. Friends began to distance themselves, and even at work, the rumors got around. He got transferred from his high-performance sales team to a basement document storage area. It's been a year now, and I'm still on good terms with my in-laws. Just the other day, while looking through a school backpack catalog with my soon-to-be elementary school daughter, she said, "Grandma will buy it for you." "No, Grandpa will buy it," I teased. "It'll be a lasting joke." The room went silent when Tina said, "Let's settle this with a gymnastics competition."
"All right, everyone's presentations are done," Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. "Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my 2nd year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. "I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime," he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look, "To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day." Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. "So, you all get a chance." As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. "Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them." It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. "All right, everyone's presentations are done." "Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me. "There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer." He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. "Meetings should be for employees only." Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. "Still here?" Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. "I'm leaving." I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick, what's wrong?" Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I immediately followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was. As the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong. Mike. What have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. I didn't do anything wrong. You're still saying that? Look at him. Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract? Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go. Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him. There's no way he was pushed aside. Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he? I don't remember that part. I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.